watched and received advice from her mother about painting her toenails. Very red, and use a polish that hardens slowly. They last longer, chip less, good on the toes. Next week school was out, and she had to paint her toenails for beach day. A magnetism of whispers that Joyce assumed were her own thoughts had drawn her to Madison, Wisconsin, and to this shabby apartment near the water. An easy place, Madison, the thoughts whispered to her, for a divorcee to find a man. An easy place, they most certainly did not tell her, from which to steal a child, carry her out and take her far, so that when her screams started, there would be none to hear her but the night wind. And so it would be this night, after the love-boat sailed away, and silence filled the house. As Saturday evening ended, the moon rode over houses that one by one became dark. Madison slept in peace then, as the hours wore past midnight. Sometime after 3, Danny Callaghan became aware of a change around him, enough of a change to draw him out of sleep. He opened his eyes and saw nothing but stars. For a moment he thought he'd gone night fishing after all. Then he realized he was still in bed, and the stars were coming from his own home planetarium, bought from Edmund Scientific for $9. It was a dark blue plastic sphere with a light in it. The plastic was dotted with pinholes in the pattern of the night sky, and when you turned out the lights and turned the planetarium on, magic happened. The heavens appeared all around you. He hadn't turned the planetarium on, though, and that fact made the acid of fear rise in his throat. He opened his mouth to call for his dad, but there was no sound, just a puff of breath. As the stars crossed his face, twisting along his nose and across his eyes, his tears flowed in helpless silence. The only sounds were the humming of the planetarium's motor and the breeze fluttering the front yard oak. Dan sat up on the bedside. Like a man buttoning his coat for a journey, he buttoned his pajama top until all 4 big buttons were neatly closed. A thought whispered to him, "Stand up. Look out the window." He clutched the bedsheets with both hands. The old oak shook its leaves at him, and the thoughts whispered, "Come on, come on." Then he knew that his toes had touched the floor, and he was up in the flowing stars. Then he floated to the window. As he moved closer, he saw it sliding open. Then he went faster and moved through it. He tried to grab the sash as he passed, but missed. Then he was moving through the limbs of the oak that stood in their front yard, struggling and grabbing at them. He got his arms around one, but his body turned upward until his feet were pointing at the sky. He held on with all his might, but the pull got stronger and stronger. "Dad!" he yelled as he was dislodged and drawn into the sky. He heard a dog raise a howl, and saw an owl below him, her wings glowing in the moonlight, her voice swept away by the wind. He rose, screaming and struggling, running in the air, clawing at emptiness. Far below him, moonlight danced on Lake Monona's baby waves, and then he was among the night clouds, and he flew in their canyons and soared across their hills, and heard their baby thunder muttering. The wonder of it silenced his screams at last, but not the tears that poured down his face, or the trembling gasp that came when he slowly passed across the top of a cloud and saw, so very far below, the silver lake and the dots of light that were Madison. He closed his eyes and covered his face with his hands as he moved up toward what looked like a silver island in the sky. The island had a round opening in it, dark and black. Then Danny was through the round opening. He stopped in the air, then fell to a floor. Opening his eyes, he found himself in darkness, but not absolute darkness. Moonlight sifted in the opening. Far below, he could see the pinpricks of light that marked fishing boats on the lake's surface. A cold sorrow enveloped him. Now, here, he remembered this from before. He did not want the little doctors to touch him ever again. He knew also that they would, and soon. He thought of jumping back out through the opening, but what would happen then? He went closer to it, leaned out as far as he dared. "Mr. Amers! Uncle Frank! Help me! Please, Uncle Frank!" A rustling sound. He cringed closer to the edge, wishing he dared jump through. A voice whispered soft, "Hello?" He backed away from the form. He could see white, a white face, loose white clothes. "Help me," the form said. It was a girl. He could see that now, could hear it in her voice. She was standing on the far side of the opening in the floor, her face glowing in the faint moonlight that slanted in. "Are you from Madison?" she asked. Her voice trembled. "Yeah, I'm Danny Callaghan. I'm Caitlin Burns. I never saw anybody else here before." "Me neither." "Where are we?" "I'm not sure. 'Cause when I come here, I remember I was here before, but then when I go home I don't remember anymore." She lowered her head. Her voice dropped to a hesitant murmur. "Do they take your clothes off too?" His face grew hot. He clutched his own shoulders. "Uh-huh. They do stuff to me that's weird. Some kind of operations." Her eyes flashed. "Yes, but this isn't a hospital." As the two children came together and held each other, they were watched by cold and careful eyes. The embrace between the children extended, the girl in her nightgown, the boy in his pajamas stained with yesterday's oatmeal. It had nothing to do with sex. They were too young. They were like two little birds stolen from the nest, trying to find some safety where there was none. "If we dive down to the lake, would that work, instead of just jumping?" Dan asked Caitlin. "I don't know. Maybe not. I've got a diving merit badge." "I'm going to try," he said. She sighed, understood. The children moved along a rickety catwalk, going closer to the opening they had been drawn through. The ship wasn't high-tech. It didn't even have a way of closing its hatch. It was old and handmade, but the materials involved were far in advance of our own. It was constructed of sticks that would not break or burn, and aluminum foil you could not penetrate even with a bullet. There were no glowing control panels, nothing like Star Trek, just tinfoil and plywood, and a tin box full of an extraordinary substance mined out of the earth that resisted the pull of gravity. The creatures hiding near the children knew what they were thinking, because they could see not only their fleshy bodies wrapped in their fluttering cloth covers, but also their electric bodies, a shimmering network of lines that coursed through them, the fiery nerves that carried sensation and love and memory, and blue fear racing from the heart. They could see in the heads lines of gold and green changing to red and purple, and they knew that these were also the colors of fear. Caitlin and Dan gazed down at the shimmering, wrinkled surface of the lake. "You gonna?" Caitlin asked. Danny could imagine Mr. Amers on the lake smoking his pipe and watching his line. He took a deep breath. What would Mr. Amers see, though? A boy falling out of the sky? Maybe, but probably not. Probably they'd think the splash was just a fish jumping. Then he heard the fluttering sound in the dark that meant the things were on the move. Caitlin drew close to him, but then the slowest trace of a smile flickered on her lips, and she raised her hand. In it was a match. There was buzzing now, urgent, coming closer. Caitlin shouted out the opening, "I live in Madison! I live in Madison, Wisconsin!" Her voice carried past the thin walls, echoing loudly, but only the clouds heard it. Cupping his hands around his mouth, Dan shouted, "Uncle Frank, help us!" "Who's that?" "My uncle. He's down there fishing." She struck the match, and in its flare something moved behind her, a green glow. As he watched, it resolved itself into the slanted shape of an insect eye, but huge. It was right behind her, just inches away. It glittered and disappeared into the shadows. And then the match burned out, and then something slid up under his shirt and slithered along his chest. He heard Caitlin gasp, heard a scream explode out of her, and screamed himself, screamed with all his voice and soul. Arms came around him, and a prick like fire penetrated his chest, went deep, made him gag, and filled his mouth with a taste like a dead thing smells. Now he could not move, could not make a sound. He felt himself being carried, felt his stomach twisting and knotting, until gorge came up into his throat. He could see nothing, hear nothing except Caitlin breathing in little shocked cries. There came a hand, extended into a faint light, as if it was meant for him to see, a long hand with fingers like naked branches.